So, picture this. You just spent like 3 weeks putting together the absolute best presentation of your entire life.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
Right. It's a 45-minute live workshop on B2B sales strategies. And when you deliver it, the chat is just going crazy. People
Right.
are having these massive, aha
The
moments.
best feeling.
It is. You're just on top of the world, and you have the recording, you have the transcript, and you think, this is gold. I mean, I am going to feed my social channels with this for a month.
Yep. The classic trap.
Exactly. So Monday morning rolls around, you open up the transcript, you find a paragraph where you dropped a really profound truth about client communication, you copy it, paste it into LinkedIn, hit
Right.
publish, and you wait for the applause,
Uh-huh.
you wait for the viral moment, and absolute silence.
Crickets.
Nothing. I mean, maybe your mom likes it. Maybe one former coworker comments like, great point. But functionally, it's a ghost town. The idea was brilliant in the workshop, but on the feed, it completely flopped.
It's honestly, it's one of the most frustrating experiences a creator or a business owner can have.
Right.
Because the underlying value of the idea is proven, right?
Right.
You literally saw people react to it in real time.
Yeah, you watch them get it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the translation
Mm.
from that live dynamic environment to a, static social media feed, it just fell completely flat.
Yeah. And the instinct is always to blame the algorithm, right? You sit there thinking, well, LinkedIn just hates text posts today, or the Instagram algorithm is actively punishing me.
Right. It's always the algorithm's fault.
Always. But we both know that's usually just a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
The reality is we see this exact scenario play out constantly. I mean, creators have these massive hard drives full of incredible content.
Terabytes of it. Podcast transcripts, client Q&As.
Stellar email newsletters, and they know they should reuse it, but the execution is just so poor that it feels like a waste of time. It's like this whole landscape littered with well-intentioned but totally ineffective attempts to stretch one piece of content across the entire internet.
Which brings us right to the heart of what we're unpacking in today's deep dive. Because inside the AI university ecosystem, specifically within APL 254, which is the repurposing workflow lab we're looking at today, there's an actual term for this phenomenon.
Oh, yes.
It's called content laundry.
Content laundry. I have to admit, when I first read that in the source material, that phrase hit like a little too close to home.
I mean, it's meant to sting a bit because it perfectly describes that mechanical, unthinking process so many of us fall into. Content laundry is when you take one finished piece of content, say a really deep, nuanced blog post, and you just stretch it across every platform.
You just wash it and hang it out to dry every time.
Exactly. But the result is that it just feels like leftovers.
Right. It's like a blog paragraph that has just been unceremoniously dumped into an Instagram caption. It has the distinct flavor of something that was, built for somewhere else.
Precisely. And you can spot it immediately in the feed. It's a carousel post where every single slide is crammed with 4 paragraphs of tiny text.
Because they just copied a whole newsletter and pasted it onto Square Graphics.
Yes. Or it's a video script that has absolutely no hook because it's literally just someone reading the middle of an essay out loud to a camera.
Just brutal to watch. So our mission today is to rescue you from this endless cycle of content laundry. Because for everyone listening, whether you are a founder, a marketer, a course creator, or, a service provider trying to build authority, you probably already have enough brilliant ideas sitting in your Google Drive right now to fuel your marketing for the next year.
Absolutely. You really don't need to constantly start from a blank page.
Exactly. We are going to explore the framework from APL 254 to help you build a repeatable multi-format content system. But before we get into the exact machinery of how this works, I need to push back on the core premise here just a little bit.
All right, go for it.
Let me play devil's advocate. If I have a genuinely revolutionary idea, let's stick with that B2B sales workshop example from earlier. I have a concept about bypassing gatekeepers that is just universally true and mind-blowingly helpful. If I just take the clearest explanation of that idea from my transcript and paste it across 5 different platforms, why does it fail? Shouldn't a great idea just shine through, regardless of whether it's technically formatted for a specific app? Like, why does the packaging matter so much if the substance is top tier?
It's a completely logical assumption to make, right? Like,
Yeah.
good ideas are good ideas everywhere, but it ignores a fundamental reality of human psychology and how we behave entirely differently depending on the digital room we are standing in.
Okay, the digital room.
Yeah. The core philosophy of the repurposing workflow lab is that true repurposing is translation, not duplication.
translation. So we aren't just changing the language, we're actually changing the context.
Think about it like this. Imagine you are giving a highly technical keynote speech at an industry conference. You have a podium, you have a captive audience, and you have 50 minutes. The way you deliver your thesis is going to be incredibly detailed, structured, and formal.
Makes sense.
Now, imagine taking that exact same script, word for word, and delivering it to a friend over a casual coffee at a noisy cafe.
Oh, man. They would think I had completely lost my mind. I'd be like shouting bullet points at them over a latte.
Exactly. The core message, the actual idea you want your friend to understand, might be the exact same one from the keynote.
Yeah.
But the way you start the conversation, the pacing, the level of nuance you provide, and what you ask of them at the end, it all has to adapt to the cafe environment.
Right.
If you don't translate the idea for the new environment, the audience rejects it. Not because the idea is bad, but because the delivery mechanism is socially or contextually inappropriate.
That makes a lot of sense. So on a platform level, someone scrolling through TikTok while waiting for a bus is in a totally different psychological state than someone sitting at their desk deliberately opening an email newsletter.
Completely different states of mind. I mean, the TikTok user is highly distracted, they're seeking immediate visual and auditory stimulation, and they have a thumb hovering, ready to swipe away the second they feel bored. Truly ruthless. But the newsletter reader has actively invited you into a highly personal space, their inbox. They're prepared to give you a few minutes of focused reading time. So, if you take the exact same paragraph and drop it in both places, it will likely fail in at least one, if not both, because it hasn't been translated to respect the constraints and expectations of those specific environments.
Okay, so duplication is the enemy here. We are aiming for translation. We want to keep the core idea intact, but mutate the hook, the structure, the pacing, and the call to action to fit the room.
Precisely.
So where do we actually begin this process? Because I know a lot of creators who hear repurposing and immediately open up a chaotic folder with 50 random frith memos, 3 half-finished blog drafts, and a couple of old tweets, hoping to magically weave them into a cohesive campaign.
Oh, that approach is a guaranteed path to frustration. Before we can translate anything, we have to establish a rock-solid foundation. And that starts with selecting the right source asset.
The source asset.
Yeah. The lab is exceptionally clear that you cannot just throw a pile of disorganized thoughts into a system and expect high-quality output.
The phrase they use in the material is fantastic, actually. They warn you not to try and repurpose a content swamp.
Yes.
Yeah.
A content swamp.
Because bringing 5 different transcripts, a Google Doc full of brainstorms, and a vague dream to the table is just begging for failure.
A content swamp is the perfect visualization for that. If you don't have a singular, coherent starting point, the AI, and honestly, your own brain will just spin its wheels trying to figure out what you are even trying to say. A valid source asset needs to be a largely finished piece of content that already contains a clear, developed idea.
So what actually makes the cut?
Yeah.
The sources mention things like a final podcast transcript, an in-depth newsletter you've already sent, a recorded lesson from a course, a detailed client FAQ answer, or even a really long, thoughtful Instagram caption that performed well.
Notice the common denominator there, though.
Yeah.
They're all complete thoughts. They aren't just premises. They're fully realized arguments or explanations. The heavy lifting of actually formulating the idea has already been done.
Right. It's the difference between trying to untangle a massive knot of Christmas lights from 1998 versus taking a single, bright, working bulb and plugging it into different sockets.
That's exactly it.
Because if you start with the knot, you're going to spend 3 hours just getting frustrated before you ever even think about creating a new piece of content.
Exactly. And to ensure you are starting with a working bulb and not a knot, the workflow requires you to complete something called the source asset snapshot before you take any other action.
Okay, let's dig into the snapshot, because my immediate reaction as someone who likes to move fast is, I know what my podcast is about. I don't need to fill out a worksheet. Let's just start writing.
Of course. That's everyone's instinct.
But the lab insists this is non-negotiable. So what is the psychological or strategic purpose of this snapshot?
The source asset snapshot forces you to take your idea out of the abstract and ground it in reality. It asks you to explicitly define 3 things: exactly where the asset currently lives, who it was originally created for, and the single main idea it contains.
I can see how where it lives prevents that vague hand-wavy thing we do where we say, oh, I'll repurpose that one thing I said on a coaching call last year, but you never actually do it.
Right. You have to actually go find the URL or the file.
But let's talk about the audience piece, who it was originally created for. Why is that so critical if we're just going to change the audience for the new platforms anyway?
Because if you don't consciously acknowledge the original audience, you will unconsciously carry their context over into the new content, which will completely alienate the new audience.
Oh, wow. Okay, give me an example of how that happens.
Let's say your source asset is a transcript from a high-level mastermind coaching call that people paid like $5,000 to attend.
Okay, very warm, high-intent audience.
Exactly. Your audience in that room already knows your basic frameworks. They already trust you. They already understand the industry jargon. So in that transcript, you probably skip over a lot of foundational explanations and jump straight into advanced, nuanced tactics.
Right, because if I started explaining the basics to them, they'd be like, can I have a refund?
Exactly. But now you want to take a clip from that mastermind and turn it into a TikTok video to attract complete strangers who have never heard of you.
Uh-oh.
Right. If you don't explicitly acknowledge that the original asset was for advanced high-trust clients, you might just tell the AI to summarize the point. And the AI will spit out a highly technical, jargon-filled script. You'll record it, and a stranger on TikTok will scroll past it in half a second because they lack the foundational context to even understand why the advanced tactic matters.
That is a massive blind spot. So by naming the original audience in the snapshot, you are planting a flag that says, warning, this content assumes a lot of prior knowledge. When we translate this for a broader audience later, we need to strip out the jargon and add more basic context.
Precisely. It allows you to control the mutation of the content rather than letting it happen by accident. And the final piece of the snapshot is articulating the single main idea. You have to be able to state, in plain language, what this asset is actually teaching.
Which naturally leads us to the next structural pillar of the lab. Once you have the snapshot, you don't jump into drafting. You have to build the core message brief.
Yes.
And I'm going to push back again here. If I just wrote down the main idea in my snapshot, why am I now creating a separate brief? Are we just creating layers of administration to feel productive?
It definitely feels like administration. Until you experience the alternative, which is the complete flattening of your best ideas. The core message brief is the ultimate defense mechanism against bad AI outputs.
Let's explore that word, flattening. Because I think anyone who has used ChatGPT to summarize a transcript knows exactly what that means, even if they haven't called it that.
Oh, they definitely know the feeling.
Yeah.
If you take a 40-minute podcast transcript, which could contain, 3 funny anecdotes, 2 minor tangents, 1 incredibly powerful core argument, and a bunch of conversational filler.
Like all the ums and ahs we're doing right now.
Exactly. And you just drop that raw text into an AI and say, turn this into a LinkedIn post. The AI is going to panic.
Because it tries to be helpful, so it tries to include everything.
Yes. It doesn't inherently know which part of that 40-minute conversation was the most emotionally resonant. It just sees text. So it tries to summarize the entire thing. It gives equal weight to your profound core argument and your 5-minute tangent about the weather.
Ugh, the worst.
And the resulting draft sounds completely generic. It lacks punch, it lacks a clear angle, and the magic of your original idea is entirely flattened out into a gray, boring summary.
It's kind of like taking a rich, complex reduction sauce and just pouring a gallon of water into it. I mean, you still have all the original ingredients in the pot, but you've completely destroyed the flavor.
That is exactly what happens. The core message brief prevents this by acting as a protective container for the flavor. Before you ask the AI to draft anything, you extract the specific elements that must survive the transition. You isolate the main idea, the specific audience problem it solves, the unique teaching angle you are taking, and the call to action.
So instead of giving the AI a chaotic transcript and asking it to guess what matters, you are handing it a highly defined brief that basically says, I don't care about the weather tangent. I don't care about the funny anecdote. This specific problem and this specific solution are the only things that matter. Build a post around this.
Yes. By establishing those parameters in the core message brief, you create an unbreakable anchor. Whether that idea is eventually translated into a 15-second short-form video or a 2,000-word deep dive article, the DNA of the idea remains intact. The problem, the angle, and the intended action survive the transition across every format.
Okay, I am completely sold on the brief. I see how skipping it just leads to generic, watered-down content. So let's assume we have our foundation. We stayed out of the content swamp. We chose a strong source asset, like that great B2B workshop transcript.
Yep.
We did the snapshot, acknowledging that it was originally for a warm audience. And we extracted the core message brief, isolating the exact sales problem and our unique solution. The idea is safe.
Secured.
Now, how do we actually turn this into multiple pieces of native content without spending the next 40 hours manually writing it all?
This is where we cross the bridge from strategy into systems. We deploy the 5-format repurposing map.
The map. It sounds very official. When I first saw this in the lab, I was curious why it was specifically 5 formats, because the default set they outline is 1 social post, 1 newsletter draft, 1 short video script, 1 carousel outline, and 1 blog outline. Why restrict it to these 5? I mean, why not add Pinterest pins or a webinar deck or an infographic?
I mean, you certainly could expand it later, but this specific 5-format map is highly intentional. It's designed to create a complete, self-sustaining digital ecosystem from a single idea, covering the primary ways modern internet users consume information.
Let's break that down because I think understanding the function of each format makes the whole system click.
Look at the distribution. You have the social post, which serves as short-form, highly accessible text to capture immediate attention in a fast-moving feed. Then you have the newsletter, which provides an intimate, direct-to-inbox experience for a warmer audience that is explicitly asked to hear from you.
Right, so the social post is the billboard on the highway. The newsletter is the letter delivered directly to their house.
Exactly. Then you have the short video script. This caters to the massive audience that prefers highly visual, fast-paced, spoken content, TikTok, Reels, YouTube Shorts. It captures people in an entirely different behavioral state than text does.
Okay, so that's 3. Then there's the carousel outline.
Right, carousels. Swipeable, multi-slide posts on LinkedIn or Instagram. They serve a very specific psychological function. They are educational, highly visual, and interactive. The act of swiping creates micro-commitments from the reader, driving deeper engagement than a static image.
Makes sense.
And finally, the blog outline. This provides the searchable, long-form structural depth. It caters to the user who isn't just scrolling passively, but is actively searching Google for a comprehensive answer to a specific problem.
So by hitting these 5 specific formats, you aren't just spamming the internet. You are strategically placing your core idea at every different touchpoint of the modern buyer's journey in the exact format they actually prefer to consume it.
That's the goal.
But doing all of this manually, translating one brief into a video script, an email, a carousel, a blog, and a text post, that's a massive copywriting task.
Which is why the workflow introduces a specialized suite of 5 distinct GPTs to do the heavy lifting. This is the machinery that makes the system repeatable.
I want to spend some real time here because this is where I see a lot of people fail with AI. Most people just open up the standard ChatGPT window, drop in their transcript, and say, write a newsletter, a tweet, and a video script.
Oh, yeah.
And what comes out is, well, it's that gray flatten reduction sauce we talked about earlier. Why does the lab insist on using 5 separate, highly specialized GPTs instead of just one mega prompt?
Because asking one generalized AI prompt to simultaneously understand the psychological nuances of an inbox, the retention mechanics of a TikTok video, and the visual pacing of a carousel, it's just asking it to do too much context switching. The outputs become compromised. By utilizing specialized GPTs, you're essentially hiring 5 different expert copywriters, each of whom has a deep, singular obsession with one specific platform.
Okay, let's meet the team then. The first one is the Content Repurposer GPT. The lab refers to this one as the anchor. What is its specific job?
The Content Repurposer GPT acts as the strategic project manager. You feed it your source asset and your core message brief, and its primary job is to help you map out the overall campaign. It doesn't necessarily write the final draft for the highly specialized platforms. Rather, it breaks the core message down into different angles and ensures that the DNA of your idea remains perfectly aligned across the board. It stops the message from drifting.
Got it. So it's the foreman on the construction site making sure everyone is building from the exact same blueprint.
Exactly.
Then we have the newsletter Content Creator GPT. Now, writing an email seems simple enough. We all write dozens of emails a day. Why do we need a highly specialized machine just for this?
Because a broadcast newsletter to hundreds or thousands of people is an entirely different beast than an email to a colleague. Think about the environment of the inbox. Your newsletter is sitting directly between an urgent email from their boss, a bill from their utility company, and a promotional blast from a shoe store.
Oh man, it is a high-stress, high-distraction environment.
Precisely. The newsletter Content Creator GPT understands this psychology. It is programmed to construct what we call a reader path. It knows that a newsletter isn't just a block of text. It's a visual journey down the screen. It knows how to pace the delivery of information. It understands how to build a seamless transition from a curiosity-inducing subject line to a strong opening hook that validates their decision to open the email, down into the core teaching, and finally to a soft, logical call to action.
Right.
It makes the text feel personal and native to the inbox, rather than feeling like a copied and pasted textbook chapter.
The reader path is such a crucial concept. If I open an email and it's just one massive wall of dense text, I instinctively archive it. It just looks like too much work. The AI specifically formats it to feel light and scannable.
Exactly.
Okay, machine number 3 is the Video Script Specialist, GPT. And this is fascinating because translating written text into spoken word is incredibly difficult.
It is arguably the hardest translation to make. Written text allows for complex sentence structures, dependent clauses, and dense vocabulary, because the reader can move at their own pace. They can reread a line if they get lost. But spoken video is linear and unforgiving.
If you lose them for 2 seconds, they just swipe away.
Exactly. The structure of short-form video is entirely dictated by audience retention metrics. The Video Script Specialist GPT operates on this reality. It ruthlessly prioritizes the hook, knowing you have roughly 3 seconds to earn attention before they swipe. It breaks complex written thoughts into punchy, spoken cadences.
Which is so hard to do manually.
It really is. It removes formal transitions like furthermore or in conclusion, replacing them with natural spoken transitions. And critically, it often suggests visual cues, text on screen, B-roll shifts, because it understands that video is an audio-visual medium, not just an audio one.
So it forces the idea into a script that an actual human being can comfortably perform on camera without sounding like a robot reading a teleprompter. That alone saves hours of frustration.
Oh, easily.
What about the 4th machine, the professional carousel builder, GPT? Carousels are massively popular right now, especially on LinkedIn.
Carousels present a unique structural challenge. You are essentially creating a mini slide deck. The magic of a good carousel isn't just in the information, it's in the pacing. You have to divide a complex idea into bite-sized, sequential pieces that logically flow from one slide to the next.
You literally have to manufacture curiosity at the end of every single slide so they want to swipe to the next one.
Yes, that micro-commitment of the swipe. The professional carousel builder GPT doesn't just write a long post and arbitrarily chop it into 5 pieces. It outlines the carousel slide by slide. It writes the specific punchy copy for each slide, but more importantly, it provides visual direction.
Oh, that's cool.
Right. It might suggest slide 3, large, bold text stating the myth with a visual X through it. It ensures the content is highly scannable and that each swipe delivers a tiny dopamine hit of new, valuable information.
A dopamine hit of information. That perfectly describes why we mindlessly swipe through a 10-slide carousel when we wouldn't have bothered to read the exact same text if it were just a standard post. It's a gamified reading.
It really is.
And finally, the 5th machine, the blog writer GPT.
When you need absolute depth and structural authority, you use the blog writer GPT. While the other formats are about brevity and capturing fleeting attention, the blog is about long-form expansion. It takes your core message brief and builds out a comprehensive, SEO-friendly article structure.
So it does the heavy lifting for search.
Yes. It generates the H2 and H3 headings, creates logical transitional paragraphs between complex points, and ensures the piece flows cohesively over a much larger word count. It delivers the thoroughness that a reader actively searching for a solution expects.
So we have the map defining our ecosystem, and we have our 5 highly specialized machines generating the initial drafts. We feed our core message brief into these GPTs, and they spit out 5 different pieces of content. At this point, I think a lot of people would assume the job is done. We copy the drafts, schedule them in our social media manager, and go take a nap.
And if you do that, you will still fail. The system will break down right at the finish line.
Why? I mean, if the AI is so highly trained on the psychology of the platforms, why can't we just trust the output?
Because an AI draft, even from a highly specialized GPT, is still just a draft. The AI can get you 80%, maybe even 90% of the way there. It handles the structural translation and the heavy lifting of adapting the core message to the general shape of the medium. But it lacks intuition. It lacks your unique voice. And sometimes it just gets weirdly generic. That final 10% to 20% requires what the lab calls platform polish.
Platform polish. This is where the human comes back into the loop to be the final editor.
Exactly. Platform polish is the act of reviewing the AI's draft and asking one ruthless question. Does this actually feel native to the platform, Or does it still smell like an AI tried to summarize a podcast?
And this brings us to what is easily my favorite concept from the entire APL 254 source document, the concept of the content donkey.
Yes, the content donkey.
I want to spend a lot of time on this because it perfectly encapsulates the biggest mistake people make even after using AI. The text explicitly warns us, do not force your social post to carry the entire source asset on its tiny little back like a content donkey.
It is a hilarious but incredibly accurate image. Let's go back to your hypothetical 45-minute B2B sales workshop. In that workshop, you probably covered the history of cold calling, the psychology of gatekeepers, 3 different email templates, and a framework for handling objections. It was massive and valuable.
Right. It was a grand piano of value.
Now, you're trying to write a single text post for X or a caption for Instagram. If you or the AI try to cram the history of cold calling, the psychology of gatekeepers, the email templates, and the objection framework into one 280-character post, you've created a content donkey. You have strapped a grand piano to a miniature pony. The post collapses under its own weight.
It becomes entirely unreadable. It's just a wall of bullet points with no narrative flow. It's too crowded. But there's an opposite danger here too, right? If the goal is not to be a donkey, people sometimes swing too far the other way.
Yes, the pendulum swings to vague platitudes. If you realize you can't fit the whole workshop into a short post, you might tell the AI, make this much shorter and punchier. And the AI, in an attempt to distill a massive topic into one sentence, strips away all the specific, actionable value. It removes the email template and the specific psychology.
It just guts it.
Right. You end up with a post that says, B2B sales is hard, but if you communicate clearly with gatekeepers, you will succeed. Work hard and follow your dreams.
Oh, I see those posts all the time. They're so frustrating because they sound vaguely motivational, but they are entirely devoid of actual utility. The original asset was incredibly valuable, but the repurposed post is useless.
That happens because they remove too much context. The skill of platform polish, the way you avoid both the overburdened content donkey and the empty platitude, is by choosing the single strongest angle from your core message brief and shaping just that one micro idea for the feed. You don't try to summarize the whole workshop, you just teach one specific email template.
So how do we actually structure that? If I have my one micro idea, how do I build a post that doesn't collapse? The lab actually breaks down the specific anatomy of a polished social post, and honestly, it's a masterclass in modern copywriting. Let's walk through this 5-part structure because it forces you to be disciplined.
The structure is designed to be lean, aggressive, and highly actionable. It starts fundamentally with the hook.
Part 1, the hook. And the rule here is that it has to name the pattern, the problem, or the shift incredibly quickly. No warm-ups. Hey guys, today I want to talk about...
The feed moves way too fast for warm-ups. A strong hook immediately filters the audience. It tells the reader exactly why they need to stop scrolling. The example given in the text is perfect. Most repurposing fails because people copy the content instead of translating the message. In one single sentence, it states the problem repurposing fails and hints at the paradigm shift translation versus duplication. Exactly. If you struggle with repurposing, you physically cannot stop yourself from reading the next line.
Okay, so we've snagged them with the hook. Part 2 is context.
The context is usually just 1 or 2 short lines. Its job is to connect the abstract problem from the hook directly to the reader's lived reality. You have to prove that you understand their pain. So following the previous example, the context might be, you take a great blog paragraph, paste it into an Instagram caption, and it completely flops. It feels like leftovers.
I love that. You are holding up a mirror to their failure. You are saying, I see you doing this and I know it hurts. Hook, then context. We have their attention and we have their trust because we understand the problem. What is part 3?
Part 3 is the core teaching point. This is where you actually deliver the value. But the key is that it must be in plain, accessible language. You explain the why or the how. In our running example, the teaching point would be explaining that while the main idea should stay consistent, the pacing, structure, and delivery mechanism must adapt to the specific platform's psychology. You deliver the aha moment clearly and concisely.
Okay, hook, context, core teaching point. At this point, a lot of people would just end the post. They drop some knowledge, time to ask for likes, but the structure demands a 4th step.
Step 4 is the practical takeaway. Insight without application is just entertainment. If you want to build authority, you have to give the reader one tangible, usable action they can implement immediately. It grounds the theory in reality.
So instead of just saying translate your content, you give them a specific task. Like, Before you ask AI to write your posts, force yourself to write down the one core message in a single sentence. Use that as your anchor. That is something they can actually do right now.
Exactly. It makes the post immediately useful. And then finally, we reach part 5, the call to action, or CTA.
And the rule here is that it must be one simple action, which sounds obvious, but I see posts every day that say, if you like this, please like, comment, share, save this for later, subscribe to my YouTube, sign up for my newsletter, and buy my $5,000 mastermind.
It's desperation, and it induces decision fatigue. If you give people 6 choices, they will choose 0. The platform polish rule for the CTA is singular focus. Depending on the goal of the post, you ask for one thing. Save this post for the next time you open ChatGPT, or comment the word system and I'll DM you the exact prompt I use. It must be a low-friction, highly clear next step.
This 5-part structure, hook, context, core teaching point, practical takeaway, CTA, it is an absolute fortress against the content donkey. It physically prevents you from cramming too much in because there is no room for massive tangents. But even knowing this structure, when we are reviewing the AI drafts, it can sometimes be hard to articulate why a draft feels slightly off. The lab calls these weak signals. What are we looking for when we review the outputs from the 5 machines?
Weak signals are the subtle tells that the AI has failed to fully translate the idea and needs human correction. One of the most glaring weak signals is when the draft explains before it earns attention.
Oh, this is the worst. It's when the post starts by defining a term. Content marketing is the process of. It feels like walking into a college lecture that has already started. You haven't given me a reason to care yet.
Exactly. It means the hook failed and the AI jumped straight to the core teaching point. Another massive weak signal is when the language simply feels out of place. The source material describes it as feeling like it belongs in a document, not a feed.
What does that actually sound like in practice?
It sounds overly formal, sanitized, and devoid of personality. It uses phrases like, "it is imperative to consider," or "in today's fast-paced digital landscape." No human being actually speaks like that on Instagram. It's a telltale sign of generic AI output. The structure might be technically correct, but the tone is sterile.
It lacks the friction of human speech. And what about the end of the post? You mentioned earlier that bad CTAs create cognitive dissonance.
Yes, a pasted-on CTA is a huge weak signal. Imagine you read a deeply vulnerable, emotionally resonant story about a creator struggling with burnout. You feel connected to them, and then the very last line is violently jarring. Smash the like button and buy my course on productivity.
Ugh, it completely ruins the trust they just built. It feels manipulative.
Because the AI doesn't understand emotional nuance unless you force it to. It just knows a post needs a CTA, so it slaps a generic one on the end. And perhaps the most tragic weak signal is when you read the draft and realize the AI has completely lost the strongest part of your original source. It summarized your points, but has stripped away the specific, weird, unique example you used that actually made the idea click. It flattened the magic.
So we've spotted the weak signals. The draft explains too early, sounds like a textbook, has an aggressive CTA, and lost my best example. I'm staring at this bad AI draft. Do I just delete it and start writing from scratch?
No, because that defeats the purpose of the workflow. Instead of deleting, you use the lab's revision prompts. You act as the editor, guiding the AI to fix its mistakes. You don't have to accept the first draft.
How does that conversation with the AI look? Give me an example of a revision prompt.
If the post is too generic and sounds like a textbook, you tell the AI exactly that. You prompt it. This sounds too formal and generic. Rewrite it to be punchier. Name a specific, painful problem the audience experiences right in the hook, and remove the corporate jargon. Make it sound like one professional giving advice to another over a beer.
You give it a persona and a specific tonal direction. What if the problem is the content donkey? What if the draft is just way too long and crowded?
You are ruthless. You tell the AI, this post is trying to do too much. Shorten this drastically for X. Keep the hook. Isolate only the one most important core teaching point. Keep the practical takeaway, but completely remove all the extra background explanation. Be concise. You force it to cut the fat.
And for those terrible pasted-on CTAs,
You isolate the problem. The CTA feels aggressive and disconnected from the story. Give me 3 new options for a CTA that feel natural, low pressure, and focus on starting a conversation in the comments rather than asking for a sale. You mold the draft until it passes the platform polish test.
Okay, let's take a breath and look at what we've built. We avoided the swamp by choosing a strong, finished source asset. We grounded it with a snapshot. We protected the DNA of the idea with the core message brief. We decided on our ecosystem using the 5-format map. We ran the brief through our 5 highly specialized GPT machines to get our initial drafts. And finally, we acted as the human editor, applying platform polish to fix the weak signals and ensure we didn't create any content donkeys. We now have beautiful, native-feeling, highly effective content ready to publish across 5 platforms. We did it. We can close the laptop.
If you close the laptop right now, you have made a massive mistake.
Wait, what? We have the content. It's polished. What is left?
If you stop right here, you have successfully completed a very efficient, very high-quality one-off task. You have saved yourself a few hours today. But you haven't actually built a system. You haven't solved the core problem for your business.
Oh, I see where you're going. This brings us to the final and arguably most important step in the entire APL 254 framework, the outro, saving the system.
Exactly. The ultimate goal of this workflow isn't just to repurpose one transcript. The goal is to build a repeatable engine. The lab demands that you save your repurposing SOP, your standard operating procedure.
Why is documenting this so critical? I just did it. I know how it works.
Because human memory is incredibly flawed, and friction is the enemy of consistency. Think about your reality. You are busy. A month from now, you're going to record another brilliant podcast or deliver another great workshop. You'll have a new source asset. If you haven't documented the SOP, you will sit down at your computer and experience a wave of cognitive load. You'll think, wait, what were the 5 steps again? Which specific GPT did I use for the carousel? What was that really good revision prompt I used to fix the generic hook last time?
And the moment I feel that friction, the moment it feels like work to figure out the system again, I will default back to my old lazy habits. I'll just copy a paragraph, paste it on LinkedIn, and we are right back to doing content laundry.
Precisely. We naturally gravitate toward the path of least resistance. Documenting the SOP turns a complex, multi-step thought process into a simple, frictionless business asset. It is a gift to your future self.
It's the difference between building a car from scratch every time you want to go to the store versus just getting in the car you already built and turning the key.
That is the perfect analogy. Today, you went through the labor of building the engine. You figured out the prompts, you set up the GPTs, you understand the platform polish. You document all of that into a clean SOP document. Tomorrow or next month, you don't have to build the engine again. You just pour in the fuel, the new source asset, turn the key, and follow the checklist.
The lab even provides a ridiculously simple but highly effective naming convention for saving your final drafts to keep this whole system organized. Because if you have an engine producing this much content, your folders can become a nightmare quickly.
Organization is the invisible foundation that keeps systems running. If you can't find the content, you can't publish it.
The naming convention they suggest is social post source asset platform date. So for a running example, you would save the file as Social Post B2B Sales Workshop, LinkedIn 2026-05-14. It seems like such a minor, almost pedantic detail. But when you look at a folder with 60 pieces of repurposed content in it, that naming convention is going to save your absolute sanity. You know exactly what the idea is, where it's going, and when it was made.
It removes the final layer of friction between creation and publishing.
So let's zoom out and synthesize everything we've covered in this deep dive, because we have unpacked a massive amount of strategic architecture today.
If we distill this entire workflow down to its core principles, the key takeaways are highly actionable. First and foremost, true repurposing is translation, not duplication. You must adapt the structure, the hook, and the pacing to fit the psychology of the specific platform, while fiercely protecting your core message.
Second, you have to protect yourself from the content swamp. Do not try to repurpose disorganized thoughts. Choose a robust, finished source asset that already has a clear audience and a defined main idea.
Third, extracting a core message brief before you allow AI to start drafting is a non-negotiable step. It is your only defense against having your best ideas flattened into generic AI summaries. It forces the AI to focus on the specific problem and your unique angle.
Fourth, don't rely on one mega prompt. Utilize a targeted ecosystem like the 5-format repurposing map and pair it with highly specialized GPTs. The content repurposer, the newsletter creator, the video script specialist, the carousel builder, and the blog writer. Let the machines do the specialized heavy lifting.
And finally, number 5, always apply human platform polish to the final drafts. Be ruthless. Watch out for weak signals and use revision prompts to ensure your social posts don't act like content donkeys, collapsing under the weight of trying to carry an entire long-form asset in a single caption.
Which brings us to the most important part of this entire deep dive. We do not want you to just listen to this theory, nod your head, and then go back to doing content laundry tomorrow. We want you to build the system. So we have a very specific, low-barrier suggested assignment for you today.
We want to remove the overwhelm. Your assignment is not to build the whole system today. Your assignment is to focus purely on the foundation. Choose one existing, finished piece of content that you are proud of. It could be a podcast transcript, a really thorough email you sent to your list, or a lesson from your course. Just pick one. Do not bring the whole swamp.
Once you have that single piece of content, your task is to complete the source asset snapshot. That's it. Write down exactly where the file or link currently lives, explicitly define who the original audience was, and write one clear sentence stating the single main idea it contains.
Just executing that one step today proves to yourself that you have worthy, valuable source material that is simply waiting to be unlocked. It breaks the inertia.
Now that you have the blueprint, it is time to put it to work. Pick that one source asset right now, complete your snapshot, and start laying the foundation for your own repeatable content engine. Stop doing content laundry. Keep digging, keep translating, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.
But before you close this out, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. Consider the possibility that the greatest bottleneck in your business right now is not a lack of fresh, brilliant ideas. The bottleneck might simply be a lack of structural respect for the ideas you've already birthed. Your best thoughts, your most profound insights, are likely already sitting silently on a hard drive somewhere, trapped in a format that limits their reach. The question isn't whether you have something valuable to say to the world. The question is whether you're willing to build the machinery required to let that value speak clearly in every room it enters.